Itchin to get a shutout. Can Vanderbilt's defense get it done?
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Joining me from Locked On SEC is CHRIS GORDY. Chris, we're going to talk about this LSU game, but first I want to tell the people that this episode's brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. Do yourself a favor. But yeah, we're going to talk about Pavia, NUSSMEIER. We're going to talk about some other things happening, some other storylines in this game for both teams. But first, Zaylen Wood was asked in his media appearance what he thinks about the game. He had this to say. He probably had more to say, but this was the gist of it right here. Chris, he said, "I have so much trust in our defense. We're itching for a shutout." We're itching for a shutout. So is this a put it on the board type situation if you're Brian Kelly, or are you just kind of brushing it off to the side? Was it necessary? Is it like kind of uncalled for? Like there's a whole lot of opinions that we could have about this material.
My first thought was it's unnecessary. Like don't poke the bear. You know, it's already LSU's already coming in fired up. They want to win this game. Vandy wants to win this game. Just don't. This happened a couple years ago when LSU, one of the LSU players is going in the Alabama game, and they said something. They're like, "Oh, you don't poke the bear." And I'm like, guys, it's LSU, Alabama. Like, you don't need any more extra motivation. I don't think they're putting that on the bulletin board. But this one might be one Brian Kelly might kind of just use to spark this offense, because it has underachieved this year. It has not lived up to the hype, despite all the big star power they have around. And Garrett NUSSMEIER has not lived up to the hype so far. And so, yeah, maybe this falls right into Brian Kelly's hands of going, guys, they think they're going to shut your ass out. You better wake the hell up. So it might be a good motivational tactic for Brian Kelly. But, I will say Vandy has not shut out anyone this year. Charleston Southern, week 1, even got 3 points. And the least amount of points LSU has scored this season is 17 in the win over Clemson week 1. So shutout probably not going to happen. But, yeah, I do think that it perhaps will be a challenge that Brian Kelly will use to kind of help motivate his team. And everything we've heard from Garrett NUSSMEIER, he had the bye week, came out of the bye week, looked much better against South Carolina, albeit had 3 red zone turnovers that, were very costly and it was just a 10-point win over South Carolina. Easily could have been a blowout, though, because their offense was moving the ball up and down the field. And Jordan Rodgers after the game said, he thought the velocity on Nuss's passes looked much more crisp and better than they had. And so, yeah, it looks that like NUSSMEIER is back pretty close to full health. But again, the problem becomes, the decision making. See, that's a poor decision making this season. They're down near the red zone of Ole Miss a couple weeks ago, and he throws a stupid interception that was unnecessary. So, if he does that this week, it absolutely will be advantage Vanderbilt. Particularly if they leave points on the board.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to circle back to that because I think there's another side to this whole bulletin board thing. And you said, and you're right, it's probably unnecessary, but and Brian Kelly probably will use it to try to ignite a spark. But Zaylen Wood also is probably trying to ignite a spark in his defense because they haven't shut anybody out. They gave up 35 to Utah State. They got bounced by Alabama. They gave up 3 to Charleston Southern. They gave up 21 to Georgia State. They gave up, I think it was 20 to Virginia Tech. They gave up, their best game outside of Charleston Southern was South Carolina, who they put Lenore Sellers out of the game. So say what you want to about that. I don't know if that score remains that way if Lenore Sellers is in the game. However, this defense needs a spark because they're underwhelming a little bit. And he wants to get them fired up. And he has a role model as far as that goes right across the locker room, Diego Pavia, with the I wouldn't call that trash. I think it's a stretch to call it trash talking. It's a stretch to really call it bulletin board material, but it is something that I think could get a spark in LSU. Obviously, their offense could use that. Also, their defense could galvanize around that statement and say, hey, we're fired up. We got an important game coming in. We're still looking at college football playoff. This is in-house. We're still looking at college football playoff implications. We're still got all of our goals ahead of us, whether we, and this is a step in the right direction. If they can get a shutout, that would be epic. I don't think it's going to happen, but that would be an epic thing to happen. Now, to your point about NUSSMEIER, one of my theories on why his decision-making is bad, a little bit with the injuries, you can't really step into a throw on a bad ankle, and you really can't deliver much velocity or much accuracy with a pulled oblique. I got a cramp in my oblique one time, and I thought that was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I can only imagine trying to play quarterback in the SEC with that muscle being pulled. So,
well, he also had a torso too. They said oblique, torso, and then he had an ankle this week. So, I mean, look, at this point in the season, nobody's playing fully healthy. But I talked to our guy Sean Salisbury, who played quarterback, in the NFL and college, and he said your torso. He goes, dude, when you're throwing and you're a quarterback, and you have anything wrong with your torso, he goes, you cannot get full extension. You can't get full He goes, it messes with everything. So the torso was really what most people were worried about. I think with the oblique, it's a little bit more, all right, feet placement, throwing off your back leg, whatever it is.
It's more of a follow through thing to me. Yeah. I think with the oblique, because you're either stretching it if it's your trail oblique, or right, you're contracting it and you're leaning into it and pushing into it if it's your lead oblique. And so that can be tricky. The torso with the rotation, the ankle, you can't really get a firm grip. All of those are great theories, but also I think the root of it is this, and the reason why I think it's, he's got to, continue to work out of this. He has a shaky offensive line. Like, it's 5 new starters. They haven't quite gelled yet. They haven't quite figured things out yet. They're very one-dimensional in what they can do. Their run blocking is not stellar. I think that contributed to some of their red zone woes. They get a ton of yards between the 20s, but when that field constricts down, Chris, it just doesn't seem like they can put it across the goal line.
Well, let me say this. They were much improved this past week. In fact, the Pro Football Focus grades were better for the center and guards. And Brian Kelly said when they reviewed the film, they thought center and guards, they were actually pretty strong. And they did run the football a little bit better this week. And that was with Caden Durham back. I think we made a lot of, they didn't run against Ole Miss. Well, they didn't have Caden Durham. He's their best running back. So the guards, the center, they were okay. Paul Mubenga is probable, and I think they're going to get him back this week. But the tackles have been the problem. Tyree Adams and Weston Davis. They had to throw Carius Kern in there, a 5-star recruit in there a couple weeks ago. It's basically, Brian Kelly said this after the game. He goes, Weston Davis, the right tackle, has not been good. But here's the thing. Do we make him go sit where he gets no reps and doesn't really learn? Or does he learn on the job? And hey, each week we want you to get better, and we expect you to get better. And that's the tough part, is with a young player, you only get game reps by playing in games. And so, I think it's a harsh reality of, okay, let's just hope he doesn't cost us a game. But we understand he is a problem. We just hope, hey, you live up to your star ranking and you eventually get better. And so that's again the tough part, because LSU is a team that has national championship aspirations, and you're playing young guys that are learning on the job. But it's the only way to learn in college. There's no preseason games or anything like that. You can go get some reps in and learn. This is it. So I do think, like I said, I thought the offensive line was better. The key is just to run somewhat, decent. Nobody's going to expect them to look like an old Les Miles team rushing for 300 yards, but if they can run for, 140, 150, something like that against Vanderbilt as a team, I think they would take that.
Yeah, I think so too, given where they've been all season long as far as like working up with that offensive line. And for their sake, it's probably good that they're improving, which, what snippets that I've caught of LSU's games, I've watched it in larger chunks this week, but before that, I hadn't watched a whole lot of LSU, admittedly. And what I've noticed is, all the rushing stats aren't there. Caden Durham missed the Ole Miss game. That's a big key. But it's going to be just kind of. It just looks like you have a whole bunch of like, to me, from this perspective, it just looks like they have a bunch of talented guys. on the roster, but they just haven't quite figured out how to gel them together and make them one unit on the offensive line. It just doesn't seem like their pass game is in sync. And, all of that is fixable, but like against a veteran defense, which Brian Kelly joked, they have 7th, 8th, 9th year guys, very mature team, a defense that forces you to communicate offensively, that forces you to be sure in your protections, that forces you to be sure in your run schemes, all of that. Like, how does LSU attack that? Is it just a talent thing? Like, hey, they're way more talented, so that's just going to take over, or is there something there that they need to do?
Well, the big injury designation we got on Wednesday, at least offensively for LSU, is Aaron Anderson is listed as probable, and he was practicing all day Wednesday, so it does seem that he is going to be a go. That's a big get for LSU because he's on paper, he's their most talented wide receiver. So you get him back in the fold. They got Kyle Parker going a little bit last week on a couple of slants, a couple of comeback routes, and he looks pretty good. So he's starting to emerge a little bit. And then you got Berrien Brown, the transfer from Kentucky, who I was asking somebody this week, I was like, I don't think he's dropped a pass that they've thrown his way. Like, it feels like he's been pretty sure-handed when they've gone to him. Nick Anderson, the Oklahoma transfer, has kind of been – he hasn't really emerged yet. They've tried to get him involved here and there, and it hasn't really worked. They have a deep threat by the name of Chris Hilton that Garrett NUSSMEIER dropped in his breadbasket last week, and he just dropped it. It was a bomb that would have been a 50, 60-yard gain, gave him his deep ball shot, and he couldn't bring it in. So I wonder if they're going to stop playing him as much. I think maybe they'll turn to some of these other guys. Xavier Thomas is another one that has kind of been ignored. It's like you look on paper and you go, God, there was talent all over this offense. Why are they struggling? And again, I think it just goes back to the NUSSMEIER injury. But if he is indeed feeling much healthier, who knows? Maybe this is the breakout game where if NUSSMEIER throws for 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns, this could be the launch of, hey, he's back, and this is a national championship contender. And, one of the other injuries I was looking at, Langston Patterson listed as probable. I think that's a good sign for Vanderbilt.
That's a very good sign. Yeah.
If Patterson wasn't playing, I mean, he seems to be the heartbeat at times of that defense.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're going to continue this talk. We're going to continue LSU attacking Vanderbilt's defense and vice versa with Diego Pavia, how they're going to contain him. We'll talk about all of that coming up next. Chris, we're talking about SupplyHouse. That's right. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, you get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. You need parts fast for a project? SupplyHouse has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer, Chris. When you're in a project, you're in a bind. It can only get tricky if you just can't get those parts in time. And the part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on a job where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping, dedicated support, make the whole process a whole lot smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and the dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for a free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And Chris, I mentioned FanDuel earlier. Did you know with NFL raging on, college football raging on, you can bet on your Houston Texans this week coming off a bye. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And Chris, these are my 3 picks right here that I'm going to use on FanDuel. I may even parlay them. What do you think of these?
Ooh, Missouri plus 1.5. Okay, I'll take that. Mississippi State plus 10.5. Look, everybody's saying if Mississippi State wins, Billy Napier's fired. So Jeff Lebby, ride with him. And yeah, I'm feeling Arkansas. It's Bobby Petrino's last game at home. I think them as an underdog. That's a live dog right there.
Absolutely. I don't know that Mississippi State is going to win that game, but they'll definitely cover. And same with Arkansas. They're playing hard for Bobby Petrino. I mean, they helped me win a parlay with against Tennessee. So I love it, and I'm here for it. So it just makes it much more exciting when you can have a little bit of action in on it. And I love player props. Like Nico Collins is on my fantasy team, so I'm going to probably have him on an anytime touchdown this week as well. So if you're a casual fan or you just love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app today to get started. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. If you need a second listen, this is the guy that I've been shouting out every episode. When I tell you take a look at Locked On SEC, and I say Chris Gordy does a phenomenal job covering the whole conference, here he is right here. Show him some love. So Locked On SEC and our whole family of shows on this network in the SEC are top notch. So you can't miss. You just close your eyes, throw a dart on any of the other 16 shows, including Chris's, and you're going to get some good content. So we're continuing our discussion, talking about Garrett Nussmeier. And to me, the game plan against Nuss is this. You don't know how healthy he is. I know Brian Kelly says he looks good. The velocity on his passes were better against South Carolina. Like everything is trending in the right direction. My thing with Vanderbilt is you have to kind of test where he is on that rehab, right? Like make him make those throws on the run, test that torso, test the oblique, test the ankle, like make sure, test all of that stuff and just make sure he can't throw that stuff. That's probably with all the talent. I think that's probably the biggest edge, right?
Yeah, I think the key, the ankle, he got banged up the ankle in the game last week against South Carolina. He came out and they taped him up, and you could see his foot was pretty significantly taped up, but he played through it. So but he took off and ran a couple times, and one of those runs was a pretty decent run because there was just a whole void of South Carolina defenders in the area. And I know Clark Lee talked about it. He said on the GPS, we've tracked him running 20 miles per hour there. So, again, maybe it's much ado about nothing, but, he's only been sacked 7 times this year. So it does seem like, maybe blitzing isn't the best thing to do, but just applying pressure and forcing him to make decisions. And that's the crazy part, too, is a couple of these picks that he's thrown this year, or the 5 interceptions, has been when he's had time. It's not like it's like been pressure. It's just been bad decisions. Like, what are you doing? I mean, that's the head scratcher because he was a Heisman candidate coming out of camp. Yeah. So I don't know. I think Vanderbilt, the key we always say is until you prove you can run it, I don't think they're going to play with a bunch of guys down the box. I think they're going to play with extra DBs out there and try to take your weapons away and, maybe challenge LSU, dare them to run the football. And if they do run it effectively, maybe, Clark Lee changes up his approach, but obviously these guys know each other real well. Clark Lee coached under Brian Kelly at Notre Dame years ago, and Brian Kelly gave him all the praise this week as one of the best defensive minds. And so, I'll be curious to see what the game plan is, but I think it's probably more of the same as well. Dare LSU to run it and try to take away the pass until they prove they can run it.
Absolutely. And switching over to the other side of the ball, Diego Pavia, we know in this offense, we know what they are, and they're very good at doing what they do if they do what they do. So the biggest key for me is patience on the offensive side of the ball. Now, earlier in the week, I said something about where they struggled with Lenore Sellers. I went back and kind of watched that game. They didn't struggle with Lenore Sellers. So I kind of misspoke on that because I saw a couple of runs, I guess, of his 22 yards and a couple of his scrambles. It's kind of what I honed in on before, over the weekend. And then I kind of went back and watched. I was like, oh, they didn't really struggle. I just saw him kind of running with space. But is there for Diego Pavia in this offense, being patient, doing what they do, motions, again, forcing them to communicate, forcing them to make calls and adjustments, things like that, ball control, that's the best strategy, right? Keep Nussmeier on the sideline, control the clock, and finish in the red zone, right?
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, I love Cedric Alexander. I wish they used him even more than they have. I think he's a really good back. It's funny, we were talking to somebody about Alabama and their lack of, the teams have run the ball well on them early and then they just stop. I thought
Ahmad Hardy last week was the same way. I was surprised
Vanderbilt, kind of got away from it, but Here's there's a key injury to watch here that just came out Wednesday evening, Corey, and it was a little bit surprising. LSU linebacker Whit Weeks is listed as questionable.
Oh, so yeah, that is surprising.
That was new coming out Wednesday night. So that's going to be one to track Thursday, Friday into Saturday, because if they do not have Whit Weeks, that is one of their surefire tacklers that led the team in tackles last year, and he's big in the run game. So Harold Perkins has had a nice season so far.
Yeah, what does he do against this offense? Like, what is his role in stopping this offense?
Yeah, I think it's going to be they had him. People fall into the whole, he should shadow him. And it's like, it's not that simple. Like the defense is a little bit more complicated than that. There will be times where his assignment will be follow Diego Pavia, and wherever he goes, if he takes off or runs, you go stop him. There will absolutely be those moments, but they drop him into coverage at times. I mean, it's interesting because I think a lot of LSU fans just say he should just stand on the edge and rush the passer every time. But again, Blake Baker it's a different defense. They don't just do that. And they have a bunch of other guys on the D line who can do that. So, but I do think at times the assignment will be, do not let Pavia out of your sights. They did a great job of balling up Lenore Sellers last week. The great stat that I think Cole Kublik put out there was last week against LSU, Lenore Sellers had 22 carries for 19 yards. But according to the advanced metrics, he traveled something like 300 yards or something. Like he ran a ton just to get those few yards. So LSU had times where they had him bottled up for an 8-yard loss, but couldn't bring him down. He slipped a tackle, and then gets a 1-yard gain. And again, as a defense, you celebrate. You go, hey, we limited the damage, but you also go, God, we missed a lot of tackles there. So
that's where I got the idea of like they struggled, because I just had it like I had two screens going because Vandy was on a bye week, and I just looked and he was like breaking tackles and he was traveling 300 yards, but on the stat sheet he only got 22, and I was like, dang, they can't tackle him. Imagine, but then South Carolina's they're just in such disarray that it's just a show there.
Yeah, their offensive line is a mess, but that's where I say that's a win for LSU if that's how they come away with Diego Pavia. If he breaks a bunch of tackles, but they still limit him to a 3-yard gain, I think they'll absolutely take that as opposed to the loss of 8. So
I would take that in a heartbeat. I would take that in a heartbeat on Nuss if he was scrambling around and he didn't get much, or he completes like 30 passes, but his yards are like in the hundreds. Like, I'll take that. That's probably a Vanderbilt win if that's the case. So, I'll be curious to see too the big mismatch that we didn't really talk about with LSU, who had a monster game last week, is Trades Green. Yes,
he's their tight end / wide receiver hybrid. That is a basketball player that he is a matchup nightmare. He kind of had his coming out last year in the Texas Bowl against Baylor. I mean, it was like watching Shaquille O'Neal play with a bunch of, people who are 5 feet. I mean, he's just monstrous. Mm-hmm. And in the red zone, he is if he's matched up 1-on-1, he has the advantage. And so
it's huge.
I'll be curious to see if it's Martell Hyde or who they put.
I think it's going to draw. I think the key, the secret weapon here is Randon Fontenette. I think because I watched at one point against Georgia State, and I know it's Georgia State, but they have one really good receiver at Georgia State, Ted Hurst. And often I was at that game, and oftentimes I would see Ted Hurst go in motion. I'd see number 2 go with him. That's Fontenette, and he would cover him. Like Fontenette's like he plays that star position, the Harold Perkins position, but he does a lot of the same things Perkins does. Gets in coverage, comes off the edge, sets the edge in the run game. Like a lot of key pieces. Like he's a very key piece of this defense. He's kind of what you would call a rover, utility guy, Swiss Army knife. Like, I think he will probably draw Trades Green, which it'll be a tough matchup in and of itself because Trades is a freak, man. And them utilizing him was probably one of the best decisions they made. And I think he was helping us out a lot.
He was hurt for a couple of weeks, and then they brought him back, and he still wasn't 100%. He even said this past week in South Carolina, he wasn't 100%. His knee, he said, but after I had the first catch, I said, all right, we're doing this. He said he thinks by this Vanderbilt game, he's going to be as close to 100% as he's been. So
that's good for them.
Right. Not so much for Vanderbilt, but
I know.
But I mean, look, and maybe he's even one you you have a star guy, the star following, but like have somebody underneath, because it's just you can't cover him one-on-one. If it's a one-on-one matchup, he will win.
Yeah, and with that whole injury thing, like you have to test his ability to get off the line. So if he's going to release, like you cannot let him release free. Like you've got to just shove him, hit him, whatever you got to do coming off the line of scrimmage. You can't let that happen. So when we come back, it's prediction time. We're gonna get what you think is going to happen. I'll give you mine. I'll give you my early indications at least, and we'll wrap up the show next. But first, Chris, I want to talk to you about Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anybody else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings the same attention to how we craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence throughout almost any season. So, like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Speaking of impossible being irrelevant, make sure you subscribe to the show at Locked On Vandy on YouTube. We keep it free if you subscribe. And this show is just growing and growing and growing. Subscribe to Locked On SEC if you're not already, which, judging by your numbers, most of the people listening to this probably is already subscribed to your show. But if you're not, go over to Chris's show and click subscribe. Click mine while you're watching this, and then head over to his show. So it's prediction time. Can Vandy make impossible irrelevant? Because a lot of people think this is impossible for them to beat LSU. Vegas doesn't, which I was actually surprised by. That first time in 51 conference games that they've been the favorite, and then also the first time since 1948 that they've been the favorite over LSU. And I listened to your show with Chris, and y'all went Chris Marler, and y'all went over all these stats. So I want to repeat all of them. But how do you see this game shaking out? Who wins? What you got?
Yeah, I think I was going back and watching some of last year's game, and I think it could maybe play out very similarly. 24-17 was last year's final. Maybe even be more low scoring than that if both teams were settling for field goals instead of touchdowns. So, but I think this is a game where both defenses will show out. And I think Pavia will get his. I think he'll have a couple big plays, and they'll have a touchdown drive or two. I will say, as much as LSU controlled the game, their defense controlled the game last week. I think Vanderbilt's got better offensive weapons than South Carolina does. So especially Eli Stowers, obviously, and Junior Sherrill, and a lot of the receivers. So I do think that will be a little bit more of a test. I will say, watch Mansour Delane for LSU. He's quickly becoming the best cover corner in all college football. I mean, teams don't even Ole Miss didn't even really want to throw it his way. I mean, they didn't look his way. Lenore Sellers did, and every time he did, it was an incomplete pass. So that's one that Pavi's going to have to be aware of where he is on the field. Don't test the lane, because you will not complete that pass. But I think this is probably one LSU maybe gets a 10-point lead late in the game and maybe kind of tries to sit on it. Vanderbilt gets a late score to make it a one-possession game, kind of like last year, and LSU gets out with a tight victory. But I've been told that they have a huge contingent of LSU fans making this trip. A lot of the traveling Tigers said they love Nashville, so they wanted to make this their game. I'll never forget, I think it was 2019 when they went there. They drank them out of beer. They ran out of beer in the stadium. They had to go get more to appease the LSU fans that were there. So, and I think they even let LSU's band perform pregame. Like Vanderbilt was like, "Hey, you want to make this a home game, LSU? Sure." I do know there will be more Vandy fans here this time around because the team is really good. So, but yeah, I think it's an LSU close win. But again, it all comes down to NUSSMEIER and this offense. If they click, I keep saying they're going to have a game eventually, or they should, that they just break out. And you go, that's the team we were hoping for preseason. But and no offense to Vanderbilt, I just think this game means more to LSU than it does to Vanderbilt. In other words, LSU is they have to get to the playoff for Brian Kelly this year. Clark Lee and Vanderbilt, it'd be a great story, but I don't think they have to get to the playoff this year.
No, they don't have to, but I think if you got Diego Pavia, you need to be in the conversation, and a win here gets you in the conversation. Now, my thoughts on this are here. If LSU can get north of 24 points, I think they're going to win. Like if LSU can get to 31, I think it'll be like a 31-23 type game, like a 31-24 type game if LSU can get north of 24. If they can't, if it's like a 20-17, 17-14, 20-14 type game, I think Vanderbilt wins that type of game because they've controlled the ball. They've played great defense. Nuss has probably turned it over 2 or 3 times. They've probably fumbled it once, or there's been a slew of penalties. Like if this thing becomes a rock fight and Vanderbilt's able to drag them I don't want to say drag them down into the mud, but like drag them down into like more of a rock fight, slug fest, like ball control fest. I think that's Vanderbilt's type of game. And I think they can win that that's their element. They can win that type of game. If it turns into a bit of if LSU can put together a couple of quick scores and really press that lead out there for Vanderbilt to catch up, I don't know that Vanderbilt's equipped to catch up. However, I think being home, 11 a.m. kick, and a more pro-Vandy crowd than ever before in this matchup, I think it's going to be a rock fight. I think it's going to be messy. I think it's going to be, you said defense is going to show out. I agree with you completely. And I think Vanderbilt can win a game like that. I think they win 20-17, that type of range.
I was going to say, any points Vanderbilt scores, I wouldn't go higher than 20.
Yeah, 20 is the max.
The way LSU's defense has been playing.
20 is the absolute max.
Ole Miss put together 2 touchdown drives right before the halftime against them, and they won 24-19, and that's the most points this defense has given up this season. So
yeah, I think 20. I think 20 is the ceiling, and only because I think they get a couple of short fields. I think if they get to 20, LSU has helped them, and I think
special teams will be bad. I mean, return game, punt returns, kickoff. I mean, God forbid somebody fumbles a punt. Punt that'll be a huge momentum shift.
Yeah, any short fields or whatever. But like I said, if LSU can get 24 or more, they win this game because Vanderbilt's not going to be able to keep up with that. So defense, control, burn clock, all that stuff. So Chris, thank you, man. Thank you for joining me on this crossover edition. And I'm hoping that Vanderbilt I'm hoping my prediction holds up. Why wouldn't I pick Vanderbilt, right? We're itching to get a shutout. That's not going to happen. But hey, we got goals, man. We got goals. I love it. So everyone check out Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy. Make sure you check that out. And he does a tremendous job there. He leads our squad shows too. So make sure you check those things out as well. All the content here, Amazon Fire TV, college football kickoff is a great show. I've been on there once. Maybe one of my clips is going to get on there this week. Who knows? So it's all a surprise. But until next time, anchor down.